Our miracle planet is ever-changing. Over vast timescales, continents travel and climates swing, forcing all creatures to find original ways to survive. This is a journey to understand one force that shapes all life. Evolution. Life force of our planet. Islands of ice. Endless coastline. And lush forest. A fairy tale land, isolated for over 80 million years. Home to misfits and marvels, found nowhere else on the planet. But how did these creatures come to this oceanic archipelago, so isolated from the rest of the world? Mystery and controversy cloud the answer. But evidence is encoded in the behavior and genetic evolution of each of these bizarre creatures. And in the ancient geology of the land itself lie clues which can unravel the mystery, which is the kingdom of birds. In the South Pacific Ocean, 1,500 kilometers east of Australia, lies a remote landmass, last stop before Antarctica, New Zealand. It's midnight in the forest, and a young bird sneaks among the shadows. This strange hobbit-like creature is a kiwi, found nowhere else in the world. Every aspect of its behavior and every physical feature reveal that the kiwi is an evolutionary oddity. For a start, it's an honorary mammal. Unlike any other bird, his nostrils are situated at the end of his beak, allowing him to detect prey up to 15 centimeters underground. And his weird plumage is more like shaggy dog fur than feathers. The youngster is intruding on another kiwi's territory. And knowing he's been detected, he takes off. The chase reveals all kiwis' most startling evolutionary feature. Instead of flying, they run. Hidden in his hairy coat, the kiwi has tiny, almost invisible wings, but they are useless relics from an ancient past. When the isolated islands of New Zealand were discovered, just 700 years ago, legend has it there were no mammals. Protected by thousands of kilometers of ocean in all directions, New Zealand was like a castle surrounded by an impenetrable moat. A safe haven for birds of all types. The mountain fortresses were ruled by alpine parrots. The rugged coastlines were swarming with vast populations of seabirds. And the primeval forests were alive with the calls of hundreds more. many of which, over countless generations, had made an evolutionary decision not to fly. Ancient New Zealand was a paradise where birds could dominate any habitat in any way they chose. The forest floors offered a banquet of juicy invertebrates, so why bother flying? With an absence of mammals, the Kiwi adopted a ground-dwelling lifestyle similar to a hedgehog. His beak mutated into a high-tech device, equipped with pressure and vibration detectors. With each probe, it detects tiny movements in the soil. So no worm is safe. But this thriving birdland, isolated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, raises a conundrum. Winged birds could have flown here. But what about the flightless birds, like the kiwi? The presence of two other creatures intensifies this mystery. A fist-sized snail, considered a living fossil, has a genetic lineage dating back 200 million years. Most snails feed on vegetation, but this is a stealthy hunter. When he senses a worm, he sucks it into his mouth like a strand of spaghetti. Another creature has just hatched from a leathery egg. He's a reptile called Tuatara, and his body bears a unique feature which predates the age of the dinosaurs. On top of his head is a third eye. It's called a pineal eye, with structures like cornea, retina, and lens like a real eye, and can detect light. Although it's a mystery what its function ever was. Just hours old, the 7-centimeter-long hatchling's instinct tells it to leave the burrow and find safety in the forest. Because bizarrely, a hungry adult Tuatara could eat him. Growing up to half a meter long, adults can live for over 100 years. They are also living fossils, older than the dinosaurs. But today, they and their primitive third eye are found only in New Zealand. So, we have a 220 million year old reptile, a 200 million year old snail, and a 60 million year old flightless bird, all sharing a remote island archipelago thrust from the Pacific Ocean around 23 million years ago. How did they get here? Long before the islands of New Zealand as we know it existed, this country had a previous existence. 200 million years ago, Australia, Antarctica, and South America were part of the supercontinent Gondwana. Around 83 million years ago, a large piece broke away and attached to its own tectonic plate, drifted into isolation. Zambia, called Zealandia. It was densely populated with the same plants and animals as its motherland, including ancestors of the kiwi, the carnivorous snail, and the ancient tuatara. All now prisoners on board the new continent. But this is where Zealandia's story takes an astonishing detour. These rocks contain clues that will ignite a bombshell of controversy about the mysterious ancient history of the Great Southern Land. In dense primeval forest on New Zealand's South Island, geologist Dr. Hamish Campbell reveals an astonishing fact about its ancient past.
Here is a clue right here that tells us that this place was completely underwater, submarine.
For proof that this riverbed was once a seafloor, Dr. Campbell reads the rocks.
This is limestone. Plenty of fossils in this. It's great. What limestone tells us is that we are dealing with a sediment that accumulated in the sea. It's what we call a marine sedimentary rock. You can't get better evidence, absolutely hard evidence, that the sediment accumulated at a time when the sea was right here and at least 80 meters deep.
The geology of modern New Zealand reveals that Zealandia had been floating on a very thin crust with little buoyancy. Over the next 60 million years, the sea began to swallow the ancient continent, and Zealandia descended beneath the ocean like Atlantis, leaving only small island outcrops behind. The great continent lay submerged for several million years, until about 24 million years ago. Beneath the center of the drowned continent, blocks of the Earth's crust began colliding and twisting with enough force to lever the edges upwards. And a fragment of ancient Zealandia rose slowly from the sea. This is New Zealand. Satellite mapping of the seafloor reveals the sunken continent, which still lies as a vast undersea plateau at depths of up to 1,500 meters. Modern New Zealand, peaking above the water, is less than 7% of the original continent. The birth of New Zealand is scientifically proven. But there's a new, controversial hypothesis about how much of Zealandia sank. Geologists now believe that limestone rocks containing marine fossils high in New Zealand's mountains suggest that it's possible all of Zealandia sank.
We cannot actually demonstrate that there has been continuous land here since Zealandia broke away from Gondwanaland. And that opens up the question, if we cannot demonstrate that there was continuous land here, could it then have been totally submerged?
If Zealandia sank completely, then all life must have dispersed during the sinking, or been wiped out.
This idea is very controversial, because if we assume that there was no land, and then explore the idea that they must have got here somehow, then there are only three options. Everything's either got here by floating, or being blown, or flying.
This could explain the lack of land mammals in New Zealand. But could the kiwi have flown here? Could the tuatara and the carnivorous snail have drifted on debris across the ocean? New Zealand conceals its ancient secrets very well. But what we do know is that the very first colonizers probably came by air. Seeds can soar on the wind for thousands of kilometers before settling. Alongside other long-distance travelers, seabirds, south of New Zealand, the Snares Islands resemble what New Zealand may have looked like soon after the seabirds arrived. On these isolated islands, a daily ritual reveals how evolution began to run wild in those early bird populations. It begins in moonlight, an hour before dawn, when an invisible signal prompts small birds to emerge from underground burrows. Known as sooty shearwaters, they form small groups, navigating a network of pathways. Their numbers increasing at every intersection. As if under a spell, they waddle robotically in one direction. Surely they must be flightless to walk for up to an hour. But then, they begin to warm up for the next stage of their ritual. The commute ends at the edge of a cliff. And just before the sun peaks above the horizon, the sooty shearwaters take to the air. A launch pad, clear of trees and branches, explains the march to the cliffs every morning. Eventually, 2 million sooty shearwaters circle before heading off to hunt in one of the richest fishing grounds on the planet. While the shearwaters follow their prey from above, their neighbors demonstrate how evolution began to work its magic among the early colonizers. Snares crested penguins live only on this tiny island. They are also seabirds that once would have flown. But a series of incremental mutations took them down a radically different evolutionary path. It's January, and this 2-month-old chick, like all his cousins, relentlessly demands food. The parents take turns, and today it's the male's turn to fill the belly of his growing chick. He joins a line of other parents on the same mission. And like the shearwaters, the penguins waddle through the forest. Clearly, evolution did not shape penguin penguins' bodies for walking. The parents arrive at their destination, and here's where the journey gets treacherous. A 90-meter near vertical rock face between penguins and food for their offspring. It seems like an evolutionary joke that they cannot take off and fly like the shearwaters. The penguins are tough and resourceful. Once at the bottom, the question is, who will take the plunge first? Here's the reason for their reluctance. Deadly sea lions lurk beyond the kelp. Timing is crucial. If there's too much hesitation, a volunteer is chosen. This time, he's safe. Surface, the penguins reveal their evolutionary gift. They can fly underwater, giving them advantage over flighted seabirds and hunting fish. But it was a long journey to get here. 60 million years ago, before modern penguins existed, a giant bird lived in the ancient continent Zealandia. It's called Waimanu, and is an evolutionary link between flying seabirds and modern penguins. Waimanu had wings similar to a shearwater, and the beginnings of the torpedo-like shape of the penguin. Rather than fly in the air, it developed the ability to fly underwater. But its body shape was a work in progress, and the drag of its wings slowed down the streamlined body. The prototype Waimanu eventually became extinct. In every subsequent generation, mutations altered its clumsy wings, and modern penguins evolved. The perfect body shape for underwater hunting, however, makes life on land a challenge. The courageous little penguin parents now face an exhausting climb. Over countless generations, these crested penguins on the Snares Islands have put themselves through this ordeal every day. Driven by a parent's instinct to feed their demanding chicks with food from the sea. As penguin and seabird colonies spread throughout New Zealand, their droppings, known as guano, fertilize the land. And seeds spread, allowing forests to flourish across the new islands, creating a perfect environment for an evolutionary free-for-all. But the story of ancient New Zealand holds even more astonishing twists. The land that rose from the depths of the ocean was about to reveal tantalizing new clues that would rewrite the natural history of Birdland. In 2001, in the center of New Zealand's South Island, fossil hunters discovered a treasure trove of animal bones, preserved in layers of sediment in an ancient lake bed.
We've found thousands of identifiable bones. This is one of the richest fossil sites of bones of this age in the entire world. It's absolutely spectacular.
These fossilized bones of birds, fish, and reptiles fill a gap in New Zealand's sparse fossil record, including the period just after it was forced back up from the ocean floor, between 19 to 16 million years ago. In a miraculous stroke of luck, a speck of dirt proved to be a fragment of a jawbone from an ancient Tuatara ancestor. Tuatara are ambush predators, notorious for sitting very still, conserving energy until the time is right. Their teeth are actually the serrated edges of their jawbone. A row of teeth on the lower jaw fits between two rows above, creating a scissor action to tear through tough prey. About 18 million years ago, this Tuatara ancestor lived and died here, leaving behind a fragment of its jaw to add weight to the argument that not all of Zealandia sank.
There's no doubt that a lot of Zealandia was underwater at that period because there's limestone over much of the country, marine limestone. But the biological evidence from the fossils suggests that not all of the country went underwater.
Alan believes that his fossils suggest a continuous community of ancient animals flourished on island outcrops throughout the time Zealandia was drowned.
I don't think it's really possible that all those different animals could have arrived here over the ocean in such a short time. How did they get here so fast? I mean, where did they come from? Because there's no obvious source for them.
If Tuatara rafted across the ocean, the well-documented fossil record in Australia would show their presence there. But it doesn't. If scientists could find a fossil that was dated during the time Zealandia was drowned, it would prove conclusively there was land here. That piece of the puzzle is still missing. But the fossil site did have another startling surprise. Ancient mammal bones. Once a year, in forests across New Zealand, a strange root parasite known as the flower of Hades invites pollination by producing a pheromone which mimics mammal sweat. Birds and many insects ignore it. So why would it call to a mammal in a land of birds? To disprove the legend, it seems a mammal did make it to New Zealand. A bizarre creature drinks the nectar, and in return, pollinates the flower of Hades. On an island of so many flightless birds, it's ironic that the mammal can fly. The short-tailed bat evolved into an oddity, adopting a unique foraging behavior. Despite the ability to fly, its wings can fold into arms. And with strong back legs adapted for walking, it forages along the forest floor. Fossilized bones at the dig site prove an ancestor of the short-tailed bat lived here about 18 million years ago. With fossils of this species also found in Australia, it's likely it flew or was blown to New Zealand. But bat bones were not the only mammal fossils found here. A team of international specialists is still piecing together the most astonishing fragments so far.
We don't really know what it is related to, but it appears to be a very archaic form of mammal.
Scientists believe it looked like a primitive rodent, with a hip joint suggesting it might have crawled, with a weird waddling gait. But there aren't enough bones yet to reveal its true identity, or how it came to be here. Whatever it was probably wiped out by what happened next. The new country was still volcanically volatile, and now more tumultuous upheavals were about to bombard its foundations, driving the evolutionary process of all the inhabitants to new extremes. Some would adapt, while others would perish. It's dusk in the forest, and one of the most extreme examples of bird evolution is beginning its evening ritual. The heaviest parrot in the world, the 4-kilogram kakapo, has to choose his branches carefully. This freak of the parrot family is not obese. He's in prime condition. But his wings aren't strong enough to lift him, so he can't fly. Like so many others in this land of walking birds, the kakapo has to hike from meal to meal. Weirdly, for a bird which can't fly, his favorite snacks are up a tree. A fat, tree-climbing parrot seems like another evolutionary joke. But nature always has a reason for successful mutations. Building wing muscles and flying demands a lot of energy. With perfect conditions in birdland for terrestrial life, the kakapo traded flight for a big body, which could store energy as fat, to help it survive when food was scarce and keep it warm when it was cold. Both advantages, which outweighed the ability to fly. There's another parrot here, the kakapo's close cousin, the kea. But this one flies. It's likely both parrots' ancient ancestor once flew, but in this birdland, they took totally different evolutionary paths. Around 8 million years ago, New Zealand was caught in the grip of another round of titanic upheavals. The same plates that pushed the islands up out of the ocean continued to collide. New Zealand's spine was forced up 3,500 meters, forging a dramatic alpine landscape. The Southern Alps, which continue to rise today at 3 centimeters per year. The ancestral Kia parrots were the ultimate opportunists, evolving a range of adaptations to enable them to colonize the brand new mountains, becoming the only alpine parrots in the world. Kias evolved a thick plumage to survive in the cold mountains, and their hooked beak mutated into a sharp tool, allowing them to harvest plants and even scavenge protein from carcasses. Then, just 2 million years ago, the whole world entered a period of ice ages. And this time, all New Zealand's inhabitants were forced to new evolutionary extremes. It's likely the Ice Age drove the kakapo's ability to store fat to keep warm, while the Kia already had an advantage with its thick mountain-proof feathers. Deep in the winter forests, the kiwi also adapted to survive cold, with a body temperature 2 degrees Celsius lower than most birds, allowing them to conserve energy on cold nights. Suddenly, the young male's senses tell him a female is approaching. She grunts, signaling that she is seeking a mate. And he accepts. They'll now pair up for life, which could be a 30-year partnership, producing up to 30 chicks. A future that will play out under the cover of darkness. This is a puzzling phenomenon among bird populations in New Zealand to this day. In this safe haven, many gave up flight, but also evolved into night dwellers, an adaptation usually associated with fear of a predator. What were they hiding from? There's a bizarre ritual carried out by the fat kakapo parrot, which could provide clues to what this predator was and how it operated. It's midnight, and a 5-year-old kakapo climbs to the top of a hill and chooses a site where he makes himself comfortable in what's called a bowl. He's a newcomer to the kakapo mating ritual, where each male must display his worth all night long to attract a mate. First, he sucks in air, inflating himself to maximum size. Then, he begins his serenade. This low-frequency boom can be heard for kilometers. But just to make sure, he also exudes an alluring scent to attract females. All this noise and smell would surely attract any stealthy nighttime predators. But the kakapo shows no sign of fear in the dark. Booming draws females close, but then his song changes to high-pitched squeaks known as chings, which are supposed to lure females to him in the dark. This young kakapo is a little inexperienced in the unusual strategy known as lek breeding, where males gather and show off, and the females get to choose. Sadly, tonight's not his night, and no one responds to his call. The kakapo returns home unsuccessful. At first light, the flashy show-off melts into the undergrowth, now camouflaged by his mottled green feathers, which make him almost invisible. The Kia's bright colors are also hidden beneath their wings, suggesting they too need to be camouflaged when viewed from above. Camouflage and nocturnal behavior are evolutionary responses to a predator that hunts in daylight, using its eyes. 1 million years ago, a creature did breach the moat protecting the birdland sanctuary, which would change life here forever. The female kiwi has been carrying her egg for 10 days, and she's in extreme discomfort. A cold puddle soothes her belly, which almost scrapes the ground. In a couple of days, she will lay the largest egg relative to body size of any bird in the world. The egg is 6 times bigger than a hen's egg, and fills her entire body, pushing against her internal organs, making even breathing an effort, with little room for food. Why would evolution require kiwis to endure this torture? One week later, the egg is laid, but the female is nowhere to be seen. In a parental role reversal, the male brown kiwi nurtures the huge egg alone for up to 80 days, the longest incubation period of any bird. His body heat stimulates the embryo to develop, but he has to leave the egg at least once every 24 hours to eat. While he's gone, the egg cools to temperatures harmful to most developing birds. But the kiwi has evolved a strategy to survive the cold. The embryo suspends development for over an hour while the male feeds. While he's away, the unguarded egg is vulnerable. Weighing almost half a kilogram, the egg could be a feast for the mysterious predator the nocturnal birds have evolved to hide from. There's a strange phenomenon that can occur in island animals. Gigantism. The moa. Potentially the tallest bird to walk the earth. Is this 200-kilogram, 3-meter-tall monster the creature all the nocturnal birds have been hiding from? Lucky for the kiwi, this massive bird was a herbivore with no interest in eggs. Only the plants in the forest. But the kiwi's huge egg does have an ancient link to the moa. DNA reveals a family tree from an ancient bird group, which originated in Gondwana, called ratites. The African ostrich appeared 83 million years ago, and around 60 million years ago the moa, the Australian emu, and cassowary, and the kiwi. It was once believed moa and kiwi roamed ancient Zealandia, surviving the drowning by living on the island outcrops. But now, brand new DNA evidence reveals moa and kiwi lived with their cousins in ancient Australia for several million years, which suggests kiwi's remnant wings may have flown to New Zealand after all, alongside ancestors of the moa. Once moa arrived, lack of predators and their plant-based diet requiring a large gut for digestion caused some to grow into giants. Whether the kiwi shrunk is a mystery, but its egg stayed huge, an echo of its ancient lineage of giants. But if the moa wasn't the predator, then what was? In the land of birds, the predator was a bird. The giant Haast's eagle, a wingspan of 3 meters, with talons the size of tiger claws. It was the largest eagle to ever terrorize the planet, powerful enough to take down the massive moa. Limestone caves reveal the remains of New Zealand's most extraordinary bird dynasty. This one is littered with bones. A 1,000-year-old moa pelvis reveals deep gouges made by these eagle talons. DNA proves the giant eagle's ancestor flew from Australia to New Zealand just 1 million years ago, where it rapidly evolved into a monster, gorging itself on an abundance of prey, including the moa. Mammalian predator finally arrived in New Zealand. Within just 100 years, humans hunted the moa to extinction. Deprived of its prey, Haast's eagle suffered the same fate. The eagle's ghost haunts New Zealand today, with much of the wildlife still nocturnal. Their genetic memory of this hunter is still fresh. The kiwi male has incubated his giant egg for 3 months now. About the same pregnancy time for a similar-sized mammal. And at last, his devotion is rewarded. As the chick emerges, the advantages of the enormous egg are revealed. Unlike most birds, the kiwi chick is fully formed and feathered as it hatches. And the egg also provides her first meal. An internal yolk sac fills her pot belly, nourishing her in her first vulnerable hours. The final triumph of the big egg strategy is the chick's almost immediate independence. This strategy worked well in ancient New Zealand. But today, young kiwis face a threat which is endangering their very existence. The stoat, a type of weasel, is just one of the mammals introduced by humans and now rampant in New Zealand forests. They are the most prolific killers of all young kiwi. She hides in her burrow. But stoats hunt by scent. Kiwis can fight back with powerful kicks. And this time, she survives. New Zealand's strange and wonderful animals have overcome countless threats and upheavals during their turbulent past. But the story of New Zealand is a complex puzzle, with mysteries about its ancient past still unsolved. Many of the clues have been swallowed by land and sea, but every now and again, another piece of the jigsaw puzzle emerges, helping complete the picture of this unique corner of our mutant planet.